All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG podcast. My name's Hat, and then Eric is back with us, and we're going to be talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake. All about it. I know Eric's kind of looking forward to it. I think you're kind of iffy on it, right?
Yeah, I think iffy would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, we're in the same boat, I think, as a lot of people, to where we're excited about it. We get excited when we hear news about it, but there's this like thing in the back of my mind where I'm just like, it's not going to be very good. I hate to say that, but that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, they're going to mess it up somehow. But I am hopeful with the 7 remake. So, I guess before we get going on that, obviously, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can check us out on iTunes. Just look up Phoenix Edge RPG Podcast. Should come right up. And vice versa, you can find us on YouTube. Other than that, I was able to talk to a few people that have been following the podcast, and they said the only thing that only criticism they gave us was that we sometimes talked too long. So I guess like our Chrono Trigger, it was like 2 hours. Some people said they really enjoyed it, but I guess they're not used to longer YouTube videos. So I guess we'll try to keep this one a little shorter. Probably won't be 2 hours, although I'm sure we could talk about this for hours on end.
Passion creates long conversations.
Yeah, I was like, come on, man. Chrono Trigger's a good game, So
showing hate in 15, love and Chrono Trigger, man, that's going to make hours go by.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But we'll I don't know. We'll try to keep an eye on the time. But anyways, I was thinking before we dive into this, like what we expect and everything like that with the 7 remake. I was thinking just make sure we're on the same page regarding how this whole remake came about, right? So, Final Fantasy VII originally came out in 1997, raving success. And I think what really sparked this whole remake hype was about a decade ago, Square released a tech demo of what Final Fantasy VII would look like if it were released for the PlayStation 3. Do you remember watching that?
I do. I mean, it was pretty amazing to look at, and it made me think the possibility is definitely open for a 7 remake. I mean, on a technical note, it was quite a spectacle, but like myself and a lot of others were thinking, with the technology that's there, how do you faithfully recreate all of Final Fantasy VII with that? And that's still something I kind of question today with current technology.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I was trying to look up the exact year when that was coming out, and it was 2005. But while I was reading up on that, I saw some other interesting tidbits with that. It said it was the Final Fantasy 13 team that made that trailer, and it took them 6 months to make it. And apparently that's actually what convinced them to make Final Fantasy 13 onto the PS3, because originally they were going to do it on the PS2. But I guess because, they spent so much time working on that opening sequence that it inspired them to go to the PS3. So, I mean, that trailer really changed a lot of things if you think about it. But I can't believe it took them 6 months to make that. It was, geez,
Yeah, it really did pull off what and showed and gauged the interest and how much potential the next gen consoles had. And it's a very smart move they decided to move 13 to PS3. I don't know what they would have done with the PS2 version, but I'm glad that they decided to jump it over to the next generation console, because there is a major difference between PS2 and PS3. So,
oh, absolutely.
I'm glad they moved on with that.
Yeah, for sure. So basically after that, there's a lot of outcry with, hey, you basically told us you were making Final Fantasy VII, and Square had to come out and say, no, we can't do it. It's not feasible. We looked at it, and to recreate a game, the Final Fantasy VII at that level of detail, it would cost too much money, or it would have to be multiple entries. We couldn't make it in one game. It would just be too expensive. And go ahead.
Now, Yoichi Wada, the former president, did also say one other thing on top of that. he said that they did not want to remake 7 until they made a Final Fantasy that could outperform Final Fantasy 7, which is him in an interesting way of saying it's never happening. I mean, obviously it is happening. I mean, he left Square Enix a couple years ago, but I mean, it's obviously happening now. So something shifted that decision.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I obviously 13 or 15 weren't that landmark. So, um, I don't know. I mean, it seems originally, well, considering it took them 6 months to make that opening like trailer in 2005, I could see why they would look at it and be like, "Oh man, this would have significant resource dump." And plus, I think they said they wanted to focus on Final Fantasy 13 and everything like that. So I think that was probably a good move. But it seems like today we're kind of like in the same boat, except they're just going to go ahead and do it. They announced in 2015 with that secret, I don't want to say secret, but surprise announcement trailer at E3 in 2015. And ever since then, that's all you ever hear about is FF7 Remake. But things we know about it, they announced it was episodic, which is kind of what they were saying 10 years ago. Like, hey, if we did do it, it would have to be multiple entries. What are your thoughts with it being episodic?
Well, I really need to. That's my big problem right now is they're not telling us exactly how this is set up.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't. The most information we have gotten from them is that they want to make each game not simply just episodic, but make like full titles out of the 3.
Sure.
Like similar to how they did 13, 13-2, and Lightning Returns. Like they're trying to like make it like a trilogy type game, but that's still not really clarifying if they're just making it so you continue to the next game or like you just start like a whole new game, like on the second title.
Yeah.
Something, I'm thinking like something similar to like Xenosaga or Dot Hack where your data transferred to the second game.
Mm-hmm. Well,
don't know if they're doing that either. I mean, they're just not giving us the information about it. For all we know, they may have just taken the criticism in and be like, we're going to make up one whole game now. And they just haven't really told us much.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on it, I don't necessarily mind that it's episodic, and I kind of get where they're coming from, where, it would just take a ton of resources for them to make the same game at like AAA quality. And as depressing as that is, that apparently we'll never get that full of a game again. I can, if that's the reality of the situation, I get it. However, my only major concern with it is basically Katase has said that each episode, I'm assuming it's going to be 3 episodes. They haven't confirmed that, but I'm just assuming are 3 entries. I'm concerned with whether each entry is going to be of the same quality. And Katase has said that they're all of them are going to be the same quality. It's not going to be like a dip in quality as it goes on. But I have a hard time seeing how that's going to happen if, let's say, they dump like $100 million or more than that into like the first one. Okay, well, how many people are going to buy episode 2? Right? Probably less people than the amount of people that bought the first one. And then the third one, how many people are going to buy that one? Less than the amount of people that bought the second one if the story is continuing. So I think my major concern is how are they possibly going to tell corporate, we're going to have to spend like $200 million on each one of these. And, it's like by the time you get to the third one, they're going to be like, only like 3 or 4 million people are buying this. So you're going to have to cut back.
I don't think it'll be too bad just because they're going to be using a lot of assets from the title they worked on before to continue those episodes. I believe that's pretty much what they did for Final Fantasy 13. The sequels, they just reused assets and they were able to make the game more cheaply and affordable there. What more I'm worried about is how much you're going to just spend on the overall product for this. I think I don't think it'll be too bad this time. I don't think it'll be like a 13 or 15 where they're using a whole new engine for it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but are they using Unreal for this remake?
Yeah, they're using Unreal Engine 4.
Okay, so I mean, it's already cheaper
Yeah.
just from that alone. They didn't have to make the Final Fantasy VII engine to make the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah, and
So
I think I've
it's
read there.
definitely that at least. And you have a lot of resources to work from in
Mhm,
terms of like, of course, it's a remake, so you have character assets you can reuse and story plot points and everything.
sure.
Uh, so,
Well,
but what I'm thinking to myself at the same time also is how is Square Enix going to go over the budget on this like they are with a lot of their titles?
yeah, I mean, the way I'm looking at it is Katase has said that he wants to make this game as revolutionary as when the original came out. So, look, when the original one came, I don't have to tell you this, but I'm just going to say this. When the original came out, it was like 5 or 6 years ahead of anything that was out at the time. I mean, if you go back and read reviews from like GameSpot or IGN from 1997, they were just like amazed, like with they said it was like film level cinematics. There was camera angles going all over the place. Like they just never experienced anything like this before. And Katase said he wants to bring that level of like he wants this generation of gamers to have that experience again, like in 2017 or whatever modern times. So considering that they're doing multiple entries, I'm telling you, man, I don't see how this is not going to be pushed back to the PS5. Like, because I don't see how you're going to have episode one on PS4 and then have episode two on the PS5, because then you can't reuse a lot of the asset. I mean, it's going to be a brand new system, you know, unless they just, it's just not going to look as good. And if he's going for that real impact with this generation of gamers, I don't see him doing at the end of a console's life. You know, do you think it's going to come out on the PS5, or do you think they're going to try to force it out in the PS4?
I have a feeling it's not going to be 2018 at least.
Yeah.
And on your comment on the them trying to recreate the like magic that in 1997, the problem I have with these developers is they don't really get why something like Final Fantasy VII is what it is. On the term of RPG itself, I would consider it very good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't, but the thing is, it's such a revolutionary in the technical aspect that it created like a cinematography in the RPG. It like at the time it had like cutting edge graphics, like the background, like everything looked absolutely amazing. Like this, like it took so many steps forward in the industry as an RPG. And on top of that, it was the beginning of RPGs starting to finally become mainstream. Now, they're not going to recreate that with the remake at all. But what they can do is just make a good remake and maybe gauge some interest back in the Final Fantasy VII series. They kind of already did that before with, well, they did do that before with the spin-off titles and the movie and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So maybe they're kind of trying to create something like that again, which is kind of weird. But I'm sorry, but back to, but on the release date thing, I don't think it'll be 2018. I think, honestly, I really think it's going to be 2020 when we see it. I just have that gut feeling. And if we have a PS5 by then, it'll definitely be on it.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, I'm looking at it like if Katase wants to keep all of them the same quality and the same budget, it's got to all the episodes have to come out on the same system, right? Because if you're going to have it across multiple systems, telling the core story, it's just going to end up costing too much for like the the third episode, right? So it's got to all come out in the same system, and I almost wonder if Katase and Nomura are sitting there thinking like, hey, uh, let's just get as much development as we can on all three episodes, right? Before like the first one releases. Because once a game releases and they start looking at the sales and they're like, well, you know, we wanted to sell 12 million copies, but it only sold 9. And we're projecting that the second one's not going to sell this much. Like, and once they start doing that crap, like Katase can say whatever he wants, but they ain't going to give him a full budget. You know what I'm saying? So I almost wonder if he's just like, hey, screw it. Let's just go to the PS5, probably like you said, 2020. I don't know if it'll be out by then, but that's kind of my thoughts on it, anyways.
Oh, I guess it all depends on how much more powerful the PS5 is going to be.
Because if he's trying to impress people, like if that's what he's going for, like I can't see any better way to do that than for it to be like, hey, like launch date of the PS5. Oh, and by the way, here's a Final Fantasy VII remake. Like, you know what I'm saying? And at that point, it would look immediately better than anything else out at the time. I mean, how long would that last? You know, not too long, but um, that's the only way I could do it. I mean, I don't even like that they're really taking that approach. I think what you were saying is they're just not going to be able to do what they did with the original just because I feel like we've kind of got to some limitations that weren't present back then. I mean, it's much easier to go from a Super Nintendo to a, to a PlayStation and amaze audiences than it is to go from a PS4 to a PS5. You know, like I can't even really tell half the time if if you have a 4K TV over 1080p. Like I mean, I can tell, but it's very minimal. You know, so the idea that they're going to be able to amaze audiences from a technological perspective, I don't know. I don't think they'll be able to do that. Now, what they could do is he could say, hey, I want to amaze audiences, but this time I'm going to make this story even better, right? If they could like tell a story that was even more gripping than the original, I think that would pretty much like do justice to the original, you know? I think they should be focusing on the story, the core narrative.
Yeah, I don't mind them adding more to the story at all, as long as it doesn't lose the focus of the main story, which is essentially go after Sephiroth. But
yeah,
I did hear that they were going to do things like they were going to dive more into like secondary characters like Jesse Biggs and Wedge, and we're likely going to see more of Midgard than just the sectors we saw. Like, I think we're going to spend a lot more time in Midgar than we did in the original game, which I'm okay with. Sure. I think that's something in 7 I kind of wanted more of, is to see more of Midgar. I may not be the popular opinion on that one, but I did think it was a very interesting place. And yeah, I understood that we needed to get out and explore more of the world, but I do wish in a sense that we did get to see more of it, and I do think the remake would be doing a good choice, indulging more on it. Not so much that it would overstay its welcome, of course, but just to get more of it, or like trying to get see more from the people's side, how they view like Shinra and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I am a little excited about them fleshing out Midgar and like making it because it is a very big city, and it easily was the biggest city that you visit in the game in the original. So I think it would be pretty cool to be able to see this massive city like you envisioned it to be. My only hope is with that sense of scale that they focus on telling a story. I hope they don't go down this route where they're just going to have like endless fetch quests in Midgar where it's just big to be big, right? Like Final Fantasy 15's open world where it was just big to be big, but there was nothing to do in it, right? I hope they don't go that route. I hope with with the 7 remake and Midgar, I want them to be like, I want it to be big and massive and explore it, but I want to be like getting to know people in Midgar and like, stuff that's actually going to support the story,
Mm-hmm. And like I said, to not overstay its welcome is a big thing. The one thing I truly do hope what they add on actually contributes to making the story of the original better.
Sure.
And not just adding fluff to make the game longer. Like you're just doing something in Midgar and some random family comes out and be like, help us with something, and it just has something like completely nothing relevant to the plot at all.
Sure.
And they keep adding stuff like that, and that's definitely fluff.
Yeah.
Or padding, or a better word to say, when going through that. Something like that would be very annoying. Or if they even do like 15, where you just have a bunch of side quests that are around you that are like, kill these many things, go kill, gather these things, go take pictures of these, or
that will not be revolutionary.
Something Avalanche would never do.
Yeah. That would not be revolutionary, those types of quests. That would be very 2003, uh, if they did that. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's more story oriented. I did see, and they said they've gotten a lot of requests to know if the cross dressing scene is still going to be in there with the whole prostitution thing. They did say all that's still going to be in there. However, I did see where they're going to have to, they said they're rethinking, and I don't know if what that means, but they're kind of reorganizing the way like the Honeybee Inn was done, because they said that was pretty risque back when it came out, and especially in today's political climate, that might be a little too much. Um, when
They did such a good job of being clever with it that I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you need to handhold people through this. I mean, first off, it's the FF7 remake. People are going to buy it no matter how they feel about a certain things in the game. I mean, people that's just a point where people just need to, not stop being offended by everything and just kind of take it for what it is. It's not coming off as something that is a positive place. So you kind of have to look at it that way also. I mean, it's trying to show you like the grim reality of places like this where services are a thing to get by, and I think it needs things like that to convey the dark image that like Midgar slums have. If you don't, then you're not. Then they have to go by other means get that idea, and I have a feeling it probably just won't work as well. And in terms of like the cross-dressing scene itself, I love it. They bring it in just because it shows that they're willing to keep the more of the lighthearted tone scenes that Final Fantasy VII does have, because stuff like Advent Children doesn't represent the type of tone that FF7 had. Like, it has its serious dark moments, then it has its more like open moments with like Cloud cross-dressing and stuff like that, or doing squats to get the wig. I mean, stuff like that is pretty cool. And and Cloud, himself is not an overall brooding character. I mean, he has moments of like playfulness, even if he's not completely, direct about it, or like he's put like himself is put in silly situations like that, which they kind of killed off after FF7 itself. And they did say that they're going to bring that Cloud back. So I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, well, it is going to be a little bit different how things are perceived, I guess, because the game looks so real, whereas the original the characters were very deformed and goofy looking. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle a lot of those scenes, because especially that cross-dressing scene, with it being so realistic looking, it's going to be, I think it might even be even more humorous. So I'm looking forward to stuff like that. So
yeah, we got scenes like that. We have the scene where Cloud's disguised as one of the soldiers, and going around there trying to do the little gun mini game where you're trying to do the performance with the other group of soldiers, and then you have the boat scene with
Red 13,
Barrett in the sailor costume. I mean, I feel like this is stuff that should really stay in the game.
I'm trying to imagine Red 13. I remember because you walk up to him and he's like jump around on his hind legs and stuff. I'm like sitting here think about stuff like that. Like, how are they going to do that in this ultra realistic game? But I guess they'll figure it out. And if they don't, hopefully they do it better. If they're going to remove stuff like that, I guess we'll have to see. I'm kind of curious where the first game is going to end, because they said each entry is going to be a full episode, or not a full episode, a full game. I'm assuming that means 40 hours at least, right? So does that mean the entire first game you think is going to be Midgar? Because that would make sense. I mean, I think if the game ended right when you were leaving Midgar and it was all of a sudden this big open grassy plains, and it was just okay, this is what's coming next, that'd be kind of cool. Is that what you were thinking?
I don't think so, just because if they are trying to do some form of world map or transition between areas, I don't think ending in Midgar will properly represent that. So I don't think so. I mean, it's entirely possible it may all take place in Midgar, but I just don't think it will, because I think it wants to take the time to show off what the game is capable of, and not what the game may be capable of next game. So I think it's a good idea if they throw all the cards out for the first game, and then you have an expectation of the second one. In terms of where I think it'll end, I'm not entirely sure. I think they'll rewrite it enough that it'll give it a like a cliffhanger, like a proper cliffhanger. Because I remember getting like arguments, like people were saying that like, oh, it'll end where, Sephiroth is in the boat when you fight Genova. I'm like, that's not a very that'd be very anticlimactic for unless they like greatly rewrite it. Like that would be very anticlimactic. I think I think some significant part of the story really needs to happen at the end. Scenes like spoilers. I mean, when Aeris dies, or
that's pretty far in the game though, unless like you said they rewrite it, but it's
yeah, it depends on how much they want to put in each episode. I don't think they could make it up to Aeris dying, but I'm trying to think of like what other parts in the game, which comes back to me saying that they just might rewrite it to make a rewrite or change something in the story enough to make a conclusion / cliffhanger for the next game.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, they are going to have to, if they want that Ares thing to feel like natural, they can't have, because in the original game, you spent a lot of your time with that character in like the first 12 hours of the game, right? So it seemed really odd if you spent all that time getting to know this character and then you have to wait like 2 years for the next episode to come out where it's like, okay, now we're going to kill her and like you should feel something about this. And it's like, well, I haven't played this game in like 2 years. Like, I don't know. Like, it would be a lot more emotionally effective if they could do all of that character development and then kill her in one game, right? So they might have to do some rewriting to, I don't know. That's kind of interesting because I don't know how they're going to pace that. Then they said they are adding a lot of story content to it. So I don't know.
Hopefully that story content is like around this too. Because if I have any criticism of FF7, it's definitely there is a dull point, between when Aeris dies and when Cloud hands over the black materia. I mean, there's definitely good stuff that happens in it, but I feel like the story, the story itself doesn't progress much further.
Sure.
It feels more like a series of events there. I think that there is their perfect opportunity to like add a lot of story to the game that may be needed.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's where a second game can properly come in, and a third game starts like after, Cloud hands the materia over to Sephiroth and all the crazy stuff happens.
Yeah.
And then like the third game can start off with everyone trying to escape from Shinra. I mean, that's what it ideally would be. I'm kind of going off like the disc 1, 2, and 3 setup here.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, each time the disc ends, it ends on a high note before you have to get up and switch them. Sure.
You know what I'm thinking now? I'm kind of concerned that like they're adding story content because and this is, it'll probably be fine, but I mean, if you look at who's producing it, Katase, and then you look at who's directing it, Nomura. Okay, Nomura is famous for Kingdom Hearts, which no one knows what's going on in that series with the story. Like it's all over the place. Nomura has been quoted as getting plot points wrong. And then Katase, I mean, every game he's ever done that didn't have Sakaguchi involved, like Final Fantasy VIII, it's been super confusing at best. Still good, right? But still just really complicated. Or he produced Final Fantasy 13. That game's like we've been playing that one, and I'm still like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to Google some of these plot points because I got to figure some of this stuff out. So hopefully with that duo where they both love those like super complicated stories, hopefully when they say they're adding story content that it's not gonna like water it down and just make people like, wait, what? What's going on now? You know.
If you like to find out the past about Cloud and Sephiroth, please read the data logs.
Yeah. Oh my god. That's what I was just thinking because, dude, when they say they're adding stuff to it, I hope it's not like with data logs and like these whole like little like constant like every 4 minutes we have a little cutscene like in 13 where it's one of them expressing their feelings or something. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that type of stuff. So hopefully it's in good taste.
Yeah, I mean they just won't show us the scope of this game, and we're just still speculating about it. It makes me wonder sometimes if they know what they're making.
Yeah. Well, I did see an interview with Nomura recently where he said that parts of the Final Fantasy VII Remake are actually ahead of development than the Kingdom Hearts game 3. He said,
I think he said that they were ahead in some aspects,
yeah,
like they were ahead on
cutscenes.
cutscenes,
Right,
for
so
7.
That tells
Then
me
Kingdom Hearts 3, but gameplay wise, Kingdom Hearts is ahead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it's pretty clear Kingdom Hearts, that game's coming out before the 7 remake. But I mean, the fact that they've gotten a lot of the cutscenes worked out and they got a lot of the story carved out. It seems like what they're doing is they're spending a lot of time tweaking the battle system. Seems like to me, from what I've been reading. Is that like going to be like a game breaking deal for you? The battle system.
I mean,
as long as it like functions,
15,
I don't really care as long as it functions.
Yeah, I'm open to the combat system. I honestly wasn't expecting them to go back to like just a turn-based game, and
me either.
They said they just didn't want to do simply when they said they didn't want to simply do a remake, and they just wanted to like recreate Final Fantasy VII. I told myself, yeah, they're not going to do turn-based.
Yeah.
Like no chance. And I was right. It's I do see that there's like a hybrid of like action and like command choosing a little akin to Kingdom Hearts, but I think a little more grounded in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm interested to see how they dive more into it. All we've seen is that one little trailer and a few screenshots. I just want to see more in depth of the combat system. And I'm kind of on board with you as long as it's good, as long as it's fun, it's fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like over the top. It doesn't have to be just some obnoxious beast that takes me like half the game to try to figure out. As long as I have a good time with it, I can level stuff up. As long as I can equip some materia, like I'll be good with it. I mean, it'd be great if they can come out with a phenomenal battle system, but I don't know. I know a lot of people make a big deal about it, and
I just hope the tone is set with the original 7. I don't want Advent Children where they're jumping on buildings and fighting each other with motorcycles.
Yeah, that's
stuff like that. That's way too over the top. But I think in terms of the tone of the game, I think they're going authentic on that, which is I think the most I can ask for from them. I think the characters are going to be very grounded and very more realistic comparatively to Advent Children. I don't think Cloud's going to be jumping off buildings and slicing entire buildings on top of that.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully it's not ridiculous like that because it'll be a bummer. I think I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to translate the journey into this game because with the original, at some point you get chocobos, you can run around with that. Then you can get the airship and you can go all over the entire planet and land wherever you want and just go run around and do whatever you want. I'm kind of curious if I'm assuming that's not going to be possible with this, right? If after all the all the episodes are out, if in that final game, if you're going to be able to use your airship and fly around. I'm assuming it's going to be something like Final Fantasy X, where like you just select like where you want to go in a menu. Or I don't even know if they're going to have that because I don't know how fleshed out these areas are going to be.
If I had to guess, I think they may be going for like a zone type system, like in 12. Mm-hmm. But I think it'll be more limited to that. I think like if you go to like Midgard, it's like there's like zones that you travel in like between sectors and you get out and and the world map is really what I'm questioning. Like when we get there, are we going to like follow down a road? Are they going to try to do like a 1 by 1 thing with 15? I don't think they'll do that, but are they just gonna, like, when we exit like an area, like say we exit Midgard, then we're like on a map and we choose the next area to go to?
Yeah.
Like we go from like we leave and it's like the choices you can pick to go to are Midgar or Calm, I believe the place is called. And you go there and then you just proceed to the next area and progress like a linear story that way. But you can like backtrack to previous areas if you leave the zone. I think that is something that they will likely do, but this is Square Enix. They will definitely, or they might just try something that's just completely different that we're not expecting.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
I know the Unreal Engine 4 is not really used for open world games, so I know it's not going to be like Skyrim-esque, you know. So I'm pretty sure it's not even going to be similar to Final Fantasy 15, I would assume. But I think, I don't know, I can't see it being linear. I feel like, especially Katase has kind of learned his lesson after 13. I mean, I saw an interview with him like a year ago where he said that if he could go back in time and make Final Fantasy X again, he would make it open world. I don't know if he's just looking at trends, but I kind of wonder if something tells me if they're going to be making a full game out of each episode, like it won't be like a little map where you select locations. Like I feel like they're going to have to like build like you said, like a road or a kind of like a journey of somehow. I mean, it'll be
or is it
interesting.
that they make like a bigger Kingdom Hearts?
Yeah. I don't know. How do you think that would work?
I mean, Kingdom Hearts 3 is basically being a bigger one right now with like bigger worlds to go in. And like of course, you traverse through the gummy ship, but like they will to recreate the experience of Final Fantasy VII. I do believe that they will have to depend more on abstract elements to get it done.
Yeah, so you're thinking maybe like you select a location, but the location you select is gigantic?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Because I could see that where like, okay, if you select Midgard, not only can you go through this massive city, but you can go outside the city a little bit too and like run around the plains and stuff. And then like if you go past this one area, like it's going to be like, okay, where are we going? Are you going over here? Are you going to Chocobo Ranch or are you going to Calm? Like where are we going? And then like you select that area, and then that's a whole big map. If they want to avoid the whole like 15 to 20 minutes of you just running through like grassy fields and stuff, I get that.
Yeah, or they could do like recent Tales games, like Tales of series, where you like exit a town or a dungeon and you're like on a semi-linear pathway with like branches to go through and stuff like that. They could maybe do something like that, and they could put events on the way there.
Yeah,
that's probably possible also.
I'm kind of curious. I'm actually kind of excited to see what they do because I think they've really gone to both extremes, right? They did 13, which was super linear, then they did 15, which was super open, and both of them didn't really work too well. So maybe they'll find that sweet spot. Maybe they'll just, like you said, go the Tales route and just I don't know. I honestly, if they just followed the Final Fantasy X formula where it was linear, but it was there was enough stuff going on for you to interact with, like I would almost be okay with that,
No, just don't make it to the level of monotony of 13, and I'm okay with linear.
Yeah, I don't want to feel
I think 10 struck the right balance with linearity.
Yeah, I don't want to feel like they just copy and pasted areas over and over again for me to run across. What's your biggest issue that you're worried about that'll like make you just be like, I'm not going to buy this game if you hear about it?
I really think of just how execution of the product is going to happen. I doubt there's anything truly that would get me to not buy it. I mean, they would have to go some pretty far extents to get me to not buy it.
Well, I mean, do you think
I would definitely be upset by aspects like man, if they start doing things like adding loot boxes and
Product
adding
placement.
multiplayer mode to Final Fantasy VII, or market or it in all the wrong ways, like Coleman and stuff like that. If it becomes like a branding tool more than a game, then I'm going to have a major issue with it.
Yeah, so I'm thinking right out the gate, like especially in the time frame that it comes, like technology wise, they can easily have some like car product placements. They can have, I could easily see something like Coleman. I feel like there's going to be product placements, so that's going to irritate me. I could definitely see DLC, which is really going to irritate me. I could see an online component too, especially when you get like the gold saucer or something like that. That could see like chocobo racing. That'd be cool. I would almost be supportive of that if you could like race against other players and stuff like that. That'd be kind of cool, I guess. But um, I think for me, if I find out that like I beat the whole first episode, but then like I missed parts of the story and now I have to like wait 6 months for each one so they can string me along until the next episode comes out. I'm just gonna be pretty. I'm gonna be pretty upset. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Other than that, how do you feel about Nobuo not doing the soundtrack?
It's not so much that he's not doing the soundtrack as much as he would be arranging them if he did come on board.
It sounds like from what I've seen recently is he has no interest. He's like, I don't want to rearrange soundtracks. I've already written. I don't want like I'm done with it. Like he's like, I'll make music for a new game, but I'm not. I don't feel like going through 70 tracks I've already written.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as much as I love Uematsu, he is definitely not needed for this project. I'm sure they could find someone competent enough to properly rearrange his music to fit the scene of the game. Mm-hmm. And like even then, like the original music is great sounding. They just, I just guess you need to just modernize it a little bit. I doubt they need to add any real new tracks to it, maybe for some like particular scenes, but I don't think that they'll have to like make a whole new set of tracks like on top of the ones that already work on a spectacular level.
Yeah, I think they're just probably just gonna like use a similar same tracks, but they're just gonna make a couple of them like last longer. They're gonna make them extended versions and probably like some remixes and everything like that. Kind of, I'm sure they'll be able to follow the same vibe. But I'll be excited to see if it's like a big name person that they pick. I don't know. We'll see. I think. What's up?
I mean, I guess I can just imagine them using like the composer for like FF10 or 13. That's just rearrange them.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I think the only other thing like I'm really curious about outside of like other stuff with the story is how do you think you're going to be doing the like character stat and growth thing considering you're transferring from game to game? I mean, if I like get all these abilities with my character in the first episode and then they make me start over in the second episode, that's going to be irritating, But I can't imagine that they're going to let me just like get the level 99 in the first game and then like, breeze through the next two either,
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting question on how they're going to approach you going from one game to the other. It's entirely possible that they just, you just start a whole new, thing, or maybe they like even make like a whole new battle system for the next one. I mean, they could go as crazy as that. I mean, they made like a whole new battle system for Lightning Returns, which is technically a continuing sequel to 13.2 in its own weird way. They could be like, oh, we wanted to make this action, but now we wanted to focus on this aspect of it more. And because of that, we aren't going to do a game transfer. But then again, the clue that had us thinking that it would go from one game to another is that they originally did this with CyberConnect 2. Right, CyberConnect 2 was helping develop the game. Mm-hmm. And they are known for making games that you take the data from one game to the next game and you continue on. So I have a feeling that is how they're going to set it up. Now, they could do something like limit the level you can get. Like the first game, you can only get as high as 30. The second game, high as 60. Then, last one, 99 maybe.
Sure.
Again, it's hard to say because we just have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's because I almost wonder if it's gonna be like you said, where it's almost like a completely new system for each entry. Because I did see where Square Enix stressed that each game is going to be a unique experience, and they even brought up the 13 trilogy, as in like each game is told from a different person's perspective or a different perspective story wise. Which doesn't really make sense because the first and third one are both from Lightning. But outside of that, I mean, each one of those do have a different system. 13.2 is mostly the same, but it's tweaked up a little bit. But maybe that's what they'll do. They'll just come out with a new system. That would be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they just speak so vaguely.
Yeah.
And that's just the biggest problem with what I have actually with this game is I feel like they announced it too early.
Yeah. Well, I think they
just showed something off to us and just don't know what they're going to do. They're like, okay, guys, we just announced a 7 remake. Now, what are we going to do?
Here's the thing that threw me off. Okay. The game was announced in 2015. There was rumors about it in 2014, but so I'm assuming that's when they started working on it at the very least. But it was announced in 2015, and Final Fantasy 15 came out on the 29th anniversary, or not the anniversary, but the 29th year of Final Fantasy. And I thought for sure, since it would have made perfect sense for Final Fantasy 15 to come out the year of their 30th anniversary. It's like, hey, we haven't had a big name game come out in so many years. What perfect time than to have another Final Fantasy come out on your 30th anniversary? It's a big deal. But the fact that they went out of their way to have the game come out, 2 months before the turn of the year, I thought for sure that was because the Final Fantasy VII Remake was going to be coming out this year, the 30th anniversary, and they didn't want it to compete with each other. I thought for sure that's what was going on. But they haven't had a single big release this year that I can think of related to the Final Fantasy. So I don't know. I think that maybe that's what they were thinking, but then things started taking longer than they thought.
FF7 did come out in 1997. It would have been very cool if it came out in 2017, the 20th year anniversary. But with how this game's development is going, maybe it'll come out in the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, dude, I'm just really hoping it's not we're still talking about this 8 years from now. And you're like, well, it's finally coming out, and I'm I'm turning I'm almost 40 or something. It's just come on, just make a good game, And that was it.
They remade 8 and 9 before 7. What's going on here?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. They get so wrapped up in these projects. I'm like, dude, you guys I'm excited for a 7 remake, but you did not have to make a state of the art Final Fantasy 7 remake. You could have just came out with a highly improved version of the original. Where Cloud had a nose and everything was even more detailed. I could switch camera angles and stuff. I don't know, it didn't have to be it could have came out on the Switch. It could have been something like that. And I probably would have been pretty happy with it.
That would have been ironic that FF7 would be on the Switch on the cartridge.
Yeah. Well, hey man, whatever. But I'm just saying, they didn't have to freaking they just go balls to the walls with these things, and it always just ends up biting them in the end. They tried to do that with 15, and it just oh, we're going to use this brand new engine, and they could never get it to work, and it ended up hurting the project more. At the very least, they're using Unreal, so I got to give them credit for that, right? That gives me some hope.
Well, I'm on board with you. I mean, it's cool that they went to this extent with a remake, but someone like me, I mean, if their intent is to reach a modern audience with it, I don't think they had to go this far. They could have just simply upscale the background resolution of the original, redo the sprites
Yeah.
and redo the UI obviously also, and I think you would have a solid product that would have sold well on multiple systems
Redo the
or
localization.
handhelds,
Yeah.
whichever, and they would have made a lot of money from that itself. I think they're if they're putting it on this scale, I feel like they're trying to make FF7 the franchise again.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's a game to do it, that's going to be it. I mean, it's going to be ironic if Final Fantasy VII was the game that made Square famous, right? I mean, they were famous before, but this is the game that like made them. This is like the shot heard around the world. Like this started RPGs were like the thing for like a decade after this. So this was like their bread and butter project. This is what made them. It'll be ironic if Final Fantasy VII is the thing that kills them too. Like, because
the thing that bothers me a little bit though is we kind of already done this. We have I mean, for better or worse, I don't care too much for the compilation of FF7.
Sure.
But they are a thing. I mean, they are technically canon to the series as much as some people like to argue it isn't. I mean, it technically is. Square Enix deems it so. And we kind of already did that, and they're making the franchise a second time. It's almost like they're just doing like a reboot of the entire franchise itself, not simply just FF7, if they're going to this extent. So they may just like entirely rewrite the story that like the compilation just never happened.
That's what, from what I've read with Nomura, he hasn't specifically said that like, hey, this stuff didn't happen now, like it's not canon anymore, but he did pretty much say that like, yeah, like with the like pretty much like we're focused on like we're not going to change, we're trying not to change anything in the original Final Fantasy VII, like the original game. We're really trying not to like rewrite anything there as far as like major plot points. But he was like, yeah, the outside stuff like Crisis Core and like Dirge Cerberus and like having children and such like that. Like if there's elements in there, like we're gonna like rewrite parts of that to like make it fit better with this game, which I'm totally fine with. And if they can fix plot holes, they should be going off the original game as the guide. So I don't know how. That's the other thing too, though. I don't know how far these episodes are going to go. Like, because technically the episodes do not have to end at the end of Final Fantasy VII. Like, it can keep going. It can keep on going all the way up to Advent Children if they wanted to, right?
Technically, yeah.
So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know. Man, this is getting me thinking. Like, well, are they going to have like a pocket edition of Final Fantasy VII, like like they're doing with 15? Like, I'm just like, oh God, this is getting me nervous. So
one thing I can assure you is that they will do too much in the marketing when FF7 is about to come out. I'm sure they're going to just like blow too much money on marketing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be through the roof. I'm trying to think like how many copies do you think this game is going to sell? If you had to call for at least the first episode, if you're going to do your gut reaction, how many copies do you think? I have a number in my head.
It will do just as well as 15.
Really?
And 15 was a moderate success.
It was like 6 million, I think.
Yeah. I think it'll do just as well, maybe a little better.
I was a little more optimistic. I was thinking like, I think it's going to do like 9. Because the original sold, I know the original sold 11, right? 11 ended up selling 11. And that was like YouTube, pre-social media. And there's a ton of hype behind this game. Like, there's a lot of people that haven't really played all the Final Fantasies, but they play Final Fantasy VII. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, I think it's going to do better than 15. I think it's going to do around 9. But I think Square, as normal, is going to, like, be projecting that it's going to be some crazy number. They're going to be like, yeah, we expect to make 18 million copies with this Japanese RPG, and then it's going to sell, like, 9.5, and they're going to be like, yeah, we're disappointed, but... I don't know. I'm putting it at about 9. That's what I think.
I know this would never happen, but for hypothetical sakes, say that like 7 bombs. That's just like as a product and sales. Like say that it's the worst game that Square Enix has ever made. I mean, Unlimited Saga is a thing, so I can't. I know it wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah.
But say it was like one of the worst games Square Enix ever made, and like the sales just plummeted. Do you think they would just like think it's beyond redemption, pull the cord, and not even make like episode 2 and 3?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because I'm like, dude, if this first one does not sell well, because episode 2 and 3 are not going to sell as many copies. I mean, I
I think that I think Square Enix
they
is the
have
type
to
of
finish
company
it.
that will uphold what they said they'll do.
They'll have to finish it, and I think what they'll do is if they really like crap the bed with the first one, like I think they'll be like, okay, this second one we're gonna really hamper down, and we're gonna, they'll go to like some great lengths, like they'll try to get Sakaguchi back on or something, like I don't know, they'll try to do something to try to, because like if they screw up the 7 remake, like I don't see how Final Fantasy can keep going, because the only other thing they could do at that point is like Final Fantasy 10-3. And outside of that, like I think after they ruin that, like I think there'll be no more positive vibes coming from the Final Fantasy universe. So
I think at best you could make Sakaguchi an advice guy, similar to 15.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Like, he wasn't actually involved, but like Tabata went to him apparently a couple times for advice.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's about. I don't think he's worked on a PS4 title or anything, so I'm sure from a technology point of view, he's pretty limited at this point. But I don't know. I'm probably more knowledgeable than I am. So
the only HD product I know he's made is Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey, Terra Battle.
Yeah, Terra Battle. I mean, come on, it's a cell phone game, and it's a good cell phone game, but it's not AAA. I'm not playing Terra Battle with like surround sound.
Yeah, Sakaguchi's trying to make his money back right now.
Hey, he's got to do what he's got to do. So, I don't know. I think what else with the 7 remake do you want to talk about?
I think I already dived into that. I think they announced it too early. I think them, along with other game industries, just need to not announce anything until you have a lot to show.
Sure.
I don't like it when they only show a trailer and say, hey, this is coming eventually. I think who did it best was Nintendo and Bethesda. Like, Nintendo announced Mario Odyssey in June 2017, and they came out in October 2017. Fallout 4 got announced in I think I'm wrong, 2016 E3, and they got released following November. Like, this is like the type of structure we need, and getting people hyped up when you don't even have a product up and going yet, I think is a big problem. And Final Fantasy VII Remake is a defining example of this. They show us a trailer and they don't show us anything for years.
Yeah. Well, we got that other gameplay trailer, but then like it's not like that. It was very cool that they showed us some like nostalgic like scenes. Like they showed him like getting shot at and jumping on the train and stuff, and all that was cool. But then they came out and they're like, yeah, none of this voice acting is the voice actors, and like the gameplay's this is highly like experimental stage. Like, this is probably not going to be like what we're going to actually do. Like, I'm just like, why did you show us this like gameplay trailer?
Yeah, I mean, they should have just left us up to speculating if FF7 Remake would ever happen. Yeah. I mean, what they should have done is I feel like I said before, I think this game's coming out like in 2020. So I think what they should have done is like announce it like E3 or Tokyo Game Show 2019. And then be like, hey, well, good news. It's coming out in November, December 2019 or January 2020, just in time for the anniversary of FF7 or something like that. And then, it's like, great, sweet. We only got a couple months to wait for this. This is great. Now they announced this in 2015, and now we just keep wondering, like, every week is like, are they finally going to tell us something about it? Are they going to tell us something about it? But we know it's just a few months away. People tend to be more patient. I don't think people were trying to, people weren't sneaking this Square Enix headquarters, but you're getting that like thing from people that like they want to go through any extent. They want to leak your emails. They want to find out anything they possibly can. about your company and what they're doing with the game, and you can't show anything for it, it just makes people doubt you more.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder if they knew that Final Fantasy 15 was probably not going to, be the greatest game they ever made. I think they kind of knew that when they had to like start cutting content, and like they were trying to get stuff to work, and they're just like in the back of their head, I wonder if they're like, oh man, this thing might not turn out as good as we had hoped. I wonder if they thought, okay, we need something, we need to announce this so like the fan base has something to look forward to. I don't know. I'm being very optimistic with the amount of self-reflection that Square has.
I need Final Fantasy 6. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
They're still maintaining the 15 spectacular. So yeah, Final Fantasy 16. Is that what you're about to talk about?
Yeah, I need to see what they're going to do with 16 and everything, or when 16 comes out, to get a good idea of where the company is at. Because in all fairness, 15 was going off a previous product. Mm-hmm. So,
well, 15 was the last remnant of that god awful Final Fantasy 13 Fabula Nova Crystallis thing, right? Like, I know they ended up saying now that like, okay, well, it's not really related to that, but like a lot of the concepts and everything of that game, finally, or they came from that whole area. So, yeah, 16 should be the first game that's like finally a fresh cut, something fresh, brand new. And I think that's why I'm looking forward to the 7 remake too. It's just like, okay, thank God we're done with this whole concept that they were hashing out through 13 for the last decade. But anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 7 remake and the upcoming 16 and Kingdom Hearts 3 will truly determine how things are going with the main Final Fantasy team. So at this point, all I can say is, please look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all that I have to say on the 7 remake. I'm sure after we end this episode, I'll think of other things. But do you have any other lingering thoughts with it?
No, I think I've said what I can about the FF7 remake. If we get more information in the future, I'd love to talk about it again.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that in between us recording this and this going up on YouTube, that they don't just like launch another 7 remake trailer. I'll be like, oh, that would be ironic. But all right, so we'll go ahead and cut the episode there short. Be a little shorter episode. Hopefully, it'll make a couple people happy and see where we go from there. But let's see. Next week we'll probably have another topic-based episode. We're going to be covering. I think we said Final Fantasy 13 next, right?
Yeah, we'll do Final Fantasy 13.
Okay. Because I know I was throwing around too, I Am Setsuna, because I've been playing that game. And I know you're not too crazy on it. So it's...
I'm split in the middle with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it might be a good conversation. So we'll have to talk about that one too. But I think we should probably do 13 next while it's fresh in our minds, don't you think?
Yeah. Let's get it over with. Let's get the hate train going.
All right, man. All right. So next week on Tuesday, you'll get another episode. And until then, thanks for listening. Again, check us out on iTunes. You can get the audio version of this podcast. That way, you don't have to watch us. You can listen to us in the car. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, check us out on YouTube, and you'll see a video version of the podcast. But until then, thanks for listening.
All right. Take care, all.